Thank you for joining another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Today's episode is called Founder of SHPE. In this episode, I have the great pleasure of talking with the founder of SHPE, Rod Garcia. We take the bull by the horns and capture his account of how things really happened back in 1974 and what really led up to this creation. There is one point where Rod gets very vulnerable in remembering a certain situation while he was at UCLA. We explore the why SHPE was created and how it came to be. I had a great conversation with Rod Garcia. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. To the audience, to the viewers, listeners, this is such a great pleasure to have you here once again in Success Innovation. Today I have the wonderful opportunity of having a fantastic guest. His name is Rod Garcia. He is a legend for those who know and understand about SHPE. In 1974, he, along with a group of other ferocious Latino engineers, founded SHPE, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. Unbeknownst to them at the beginning, this has become a national organization. Welcome, Senor Rod Garcia, to Success Innovation. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. Thanks you for interviewing me.
Thank you, sir. And this is such a pleasure and a treat for me personally to understand and get to know you a little better. I quickly summarized in a couple sentences what you did, who you are, but I want you to go back and start telling us a little bit about your early years. Where were you born, and how was your experience growing up? Can you share?
Sure. I was born in East Los Angeles. My parents, my dad was from Zacatecas, Mexico, and my mom was born in Los Angeles, but her parents came from Chihuahua.
Okay, so both parents are immigrants, and they came here.
Well, no, my mother was born here, but her
Okay.
parents came from
Oh,
Chihuahua.
okay. Her parents came from Chihuahua, and they met here, and your family was started, essentially, your paternal and maternal family here as siblings and whatnot came along. Are you the oldest or one of the youngest?
I'm the youngest.
Oh.
My brother Rudy is 9 years older than me. My sister is 12 years older than me, so I'm really the youngest.
Okay. How was it growing up in East LA at that time?
Well, I think I was pretty young, so didn't know. I think in those days, it wasn't as, crazy. People didn't have guns, like now they got guns, right?
Okay.
They had knives, but as far as where I was brought up, I remember, we moved out of East Los Angeles when I was 10.
Okay.
So I lived there 10 years. And during that period of time, I was predominantly in grammar school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't go to the junior high or the high school.
In East LA, okay.
Yeah, so I didn't really get that kind of exposure. And where I did go to school, it was predominantly the students were predominantly white. It was kind of like on the borderline between East LA and I'm trying to remember the other area, Bella Vista or something like that. And it was predominantly white. So there wasn't a lot of gang activity or anything like that, especially at that age,
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing that ever happened to me is because we used to walk to school. I mean, I used to walk. Nowadays, people don't walk to school because, crazy people out there. But I walk about a mile to school and back, on my own.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing that ever happened to me, standpoint of so-called violence, but there was really no violence, was that there was a fellow one day that jumped out of a tree and asked for my money.
Where's your money? Give me the money.
And I had I don't know if I had 5 cents or what.
Uh-huh.
But that was about the most scary thing that ever happened to me. That's about it.
Okay, all right.
Then we moved to Montebello, about 1954 on there. 10 or 11. And that was Montebello at that time was predominantly white also. Now it's very Latino.
Okay.
But at that time it was, again, white. And the Latinos that did go to school there were from Pico Rivera, across the river. I was in Montebello proper. I lived in Montebello proper. And the only Latino around where we lived, that was across the street from us, close by, there was a Latino family. And so we were probably the second Latino family around there. And I don't think we were really welcome, even by the Latinos, because the stigma was that if you weren't white, you were subhuman. You weren't quite as elite. So I think they had to ingrain that in a lot of Latinos. Later on, we all became friends, but I mean, at that time when we first got there, it was like, there was nothing mean or violent out of it. Nothing, no traumatic scenes or anything like that.
Okay. And then, so you grow up, you go to high school, middle school, high school in that general area now in Bellflower or
No, Montebello.
Montebello. I'm sorry, Montebello. And then how did you end up going to university and pursuing an engineering degree, predominantly in civil engineering?
So I went to Montebello Junior High and high school. And basically, again, it was a predominantly white school, the population predominantly white again. And around that same time, I think when I went to high school, I'm trying to remember exactly when Sputnik hit, the Russian, I think maybe just before I went to high school, but Sputnik went to orbit from the Russians. The Russians put the first satellite into the atmosphere, into the
orbit.
Space, yeah, orbit.
Right.
Yeah. And because of that, the nation became kind of mobilized to compete with them and to put, to do our thing, to compete with them. And so there was a lot of emphasis from the schools to educate people, and in those days they didn't call it STEM, but in STEM, but predominantly in engineering, okay? And so the programs were engineering, stuff like that. I happened to be good in mathematics. The predominant number, the students in that school, a lot of them were kind of like, what's the word? They kind of picked you, and they would recommend that you go into this program. And the program was set up for pre-college, and it was kind of set up for going into engineering. So in other words, they give you all the courses to get into college and to go into engineering. But I didn't, my parents didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. It's just that my friends, and again, my math was good enough, so I guess they just put me into the program, and I just kind of fell into it. So in other words, Sputnik, because of Sputnik, a lot of people were kind of pushed into engineering.
Wow.
And I just happened to be the right place at the right time.
Okay.
And the people around me, again, predominantly white, were students going into that program, and I fell into it.
Okay.
So that's how I got into that. And when you say, how did I go into university and stuff like that? Well, nothing was planned. Again, my mother, I think, had she might have gone to junior high, but she didn't have a diploma. And my dad didn't have a diploma. The only thing they cared about is that I didn't work too hard, which I like that idea,
Okay. All right.
my dad did work hard, because he was a butcher.
Okay.
And my mother was a seamstress. But they kind of, because I was 9 years younger than my brother, I was the baby of the family, right? So my brother took the brunt of it, and I think he had to work hard and had paper route, and eventually went to the Air Force. But in my case, they kind of softened up, and the only thing they wanted me to have a white collar job. They didn't care what it was. It could be a bank or whatever. They didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
So they were supportive, but not knowing where I was going. And my mother would help me with my homework because she knew it was important.
Right.
But that was the extent of it. My dad only spoke Spanish to me, and my mother spoke English because when I was in grammar school, they kind of said, well, he has an accent. He needs to go to special training, and you parents need to speak to him in English. So I spoke nothing but Spanish until I went to start my grammar school. And then I went to that program, and they taught me how to pronounce words, in the English manner, so to speak.
Right, right.
And so wanted to get rid of my accent. I guess that was basically it.
Uh-huh.
And my mother, again, would speak to me in English, my dad in Spanish.
Wow.
So then when I went to college, again, there was nothing planned. It was, again, all my friends were going to college. They had taken the SAT. One day I was I think it was math class. And all of a sudden they said, okay, everybody's going to take the SAT. Take off. They all, I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the other students knew what that was. I guess their parents told them what to take, or concert told them, but nobody told me. So I didn't take the SAT. So that was a kind of prerequisite to go to college, right? You needed that. But I didn't because nobody told me.
Right.
So anyway, when I got to finally graduate from high school, a lot of my friends were going to East LA College or junior college.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of other people were going to the other universities. But I went to East LA College again. Seems simpler, and it was, and it wasn't that expensive. And there at East LA College was a very good school, by the way. They had a program for engineering.
Okay.
At a junior college, which is, not all of them have it. So it was very good.
Right.
So I took my physics there, my calculus. I took all my prerequisites to transfer. And again, my parents were there for me, but nobody was planning this, and neither was I. It's just kind of falling into these things. They gave me a scholarship, a $50 scholarship, I think it was a Manuel Castro scholarship, $50. And I remember I had a 52 Chevy, and I remember I needed some tires.
Okay.
And I took the $50 and bought some tires. Yeah.
It was either that or staying stranded.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It was my mom's car. I used to borrow it.
Yes, you still got to put tires on that.
Yeah.
So just really quickly, fact on that, the Sputnik actually launched on October 4th of 1957. So just for the audience,
yeah,
and myself.
Okay, so
yeah. So
I started high school in 1959, I guess.
Okay.
So that's about the right time.
Okay. And so you went into East LA Junior or Community College, as is now called, and you had a scholarship for $50. How did you end up pursuing civil engineering out of all the engineering majors? What attracted you to civil engineering that you can still recall?
Well, so at East LA College, it was general engineering. You just every prerequisites, right?
Okay.
Then we had to decide where to transfer, and I decided to transfer to UCLA. Okay. And luckily, they didn't require the SAT; they required some other exam, which I took. And I remember taking the exam, and we didn't do all that well because I told the calculus teacher afterwards. I said, they hit us with differentials, and they hadn't taught us differentials, in JCs. So Mr. Johnson, I remember saying, "Oh, I'm glad you told us. So from now on, I'm going to put differentials on the program." But I did transfer to UCLA, and I I I dropped out of UCLA after, say, about a month, maybe. My parents were willing to pay for my tuition and were paying for me to be a resident at Sproul Hall. So I'll be a full student, and I was overwhelmed. East LA College, no problem, right? When I got to UCLA, I got overwhelmed.
Why were you overwhelmed? What was the, I mean, obviously, to paint the picture, community college, you're going, the classes are a little bit smaller. The student to professor teacher ratio, obviously a lot smaller. Teachers and professors in community college are way more accessible, and they're the ones actually teaching and administering the test. Whereas when you transfer over to a four-year university, similar like UCLA, for example, as you mentioned, classes, from my perspective right now, they're like 300, 200 students on a huge lecture hall, and it's more of a stadium lecture hall where you actually sit way at the top, but you can't see anything the professor's writing unless you actually sit in front, and still you got to squint at the front, because it's sitting at the front of a lecture hall is similar to sitting at the back of a regular classroom. The
Absolutely right.
blackboard is huge and it's large. So what actually overwhelmed you? Was it the whole experience, the largeness, the vastness of the campus, the large number of new students that were
Well,
now
it
there?
was all that plus more, because
Okay.
basically it was a cultural shock for me.
Okay.
One, I was leaving my home
Okay.
and living on campus, right? That's the
Mhm.
first thing.
Okay.
Secondly, um, like you said, everything was huge, right?
Mhm.
And then I remember taking a class in dynamics,
Okay.
and the professor was, I thought he was pretty poor, and he made, his lecture and all that stuff, but it was a pretty poor presentation, and the book was lousy,
Mhm.
and that was kind of difficult for me. So that kind of scared me. I had no support system there either, because who do I go to? I didn't know anybody. My parents didn't know anybody. Didn't have schooling that could help me. So I was on my own. Um, Secondly, one day I felt that overwhelmed, right? So I went to a counselor. I had like a psychologist there. I went and talked to them and said, "Look at this. I'm going through this," but they weren't very helpful. He wasn't very helpful. Um, so I don't know what came first, but probably just before that, or maybe just after that. I think it was before. I was, and again, I was the only Latino, I think, in the engineering. I didn't see any of the Latinos even on campus, but at least that's what I felt.
Mhm.
And in engineering, none. So that's overwhelming. And then one day I go down to the lobby of the hall, and there's a white guy there sitting there, and he looks at me and he says, "What are you doing here?" And that kind of really hit me hard.
Why did it hit you hard? What happened?
I'm sorry, my emotions are coming up.
I understand. I understand. Yes. Take your time.
Because I felt that I belong. I belong there. I'm sorry. I don't know why it
It's
hit
okay.
me. It's never hit me before. I told the story before several times, but it hit me hard right now. Anyway, so I said to myself, "What am I doing here?" And I dropped out. I probably thought I saw a psychologist. Then I dropped out probably within about another week or two. I went back and told my parents. They told me, "Don't worry about it. Keep the money." And they just love me. So what happened after that, because you asked me about civil engineering, right?
Yes, sir.
At UCLA, I think they didn't. I don't think that third year they had that option yet. I think that you get to that in the last year. They're more general. But then what happened? Um, I went to. I decided I need a job. Okay, well, two reasons. One, I dropped out. I at East LA College, I met a lady and I got married with her. And I had to make a living. So I had a friend that was working for the LA County, and he was like a draftsman. At that time, they called him draftsman. Now they call them CAD operators or whatever, because now everything's electronic, computerized.
Right.
But in those days, it was all pen, pencil, and paper.
Yeah, and an eraser to erase the lines and whatnot.
Yeah,
And a little brush to
no, we had
brush.
right,
Oh, right.
electric eraser, and yeah, you're right. And so anyway, he was working there, and he was called an engineering aide. And I talked to him, and it was Louis Gutierrez, and I said, Louis, how did you get that job? And then he said, well, you have to take an exam. And he said, I said, what kind of exam is it? Well, he said, I'll tell you what to study. So he prepared me. I took the exam and I passed it, and they hired me right away. And
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
That's awesome.
so
Yes.
right away I had a job. In those days, I think it was $560 a month,
Okay.
and that was pretty good money actually.
Yeah.
I think I was making as much as my dad, working in the Montanza. My dad was working in the
Uh-huh.
meatpacking house.
Right.
And I think he was a little jealous,
He's like, how is this kid making more money than me? What's going on?
Yeah. So, so anyway, so I got married, I had kids,
Uh-huh.
and I decided to continue to go to school at night. And so I started to.
So did you go back to East LA Community College, junior college, or how did you end up
No, I
taking
had already
night?
graduated from there. I had
Okay.
graduated or transferred to UCLA, and I dropped
Okay.
out of UCLA. So,
Okay.
so I had 2 more years to go.
Okay.
So I had to matriculate enough units to graduate with a BS degree. And I'm trying to remember, somewhere along the line, I transferred from the county to the city of LA.
Okay.
And got an even better job there.
Okay.
Because one of the things I was able to do, even before I got a degree, I passed what they call the engineering training exam. It's a
Okay.
state exam.
Right.
It's the first step in becoming a registered professional engineer in the state of California.
Okay.
And that was equivalent to a full degree.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, within a period of 2.5 years, I had the equivalent of a degree. So right there at the county, they promoted me to a full engineer.
Wow.
And then I worked there for a while, but then I transferred to the city of LA.
Okay.
But the job I had there at the county was kind of boring, and those people were kind of like backwards to where I was working. It was called mapping. And I wanted to get out of there. And this fellow from the city told me about the city, and he suggested I go there, and I did go. And I remember going to a Christmas party there, and they're having these parties. I said, I like this place. They have parties and real friendly there. They're nice. I like it. I'd rather go here than work for the county.
You definitely enjoy the atmosphere at this office, and you wanted to work there, so you sought the opportunity.
Plus, with the county, I asked them to put me on a rotation program so I could learn different subjects. They want to keep me in mapping, and the city right away put me on a rotation program.
Oh wow! Okay.
So that I would go to different departments or divisions and learn different aspects of civil engineering.
Right.
So that's exposure to civil engineering was how
you
became a
ended
civil
up.
engineer.
Okay. Okay.
At the city, they had a program also uh, that they would pay your tuition if you were going for a degree. But what happened is that, and 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 when I got there, it was kind of like the tail end of it. What happened is that I enrolled the first quarter or first semester at USC,
Okay, all right. So
and
you also went with the Trojans, all right? Okay.
it was expensive, right?
Right.
So the city would pay for it. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is a night school though, and and then they killed the program,
Oh, okay.
and so I had to drop out of USC and go. I went to Cal State Los Angeles because I could afford that.
Okay. Okay.
And but I think that was a better move. Well, I don't know if it was a better move or not, but
It
it was
was a move that suited you and that got you to where you're at, and it allowed you to get an education and
it,
open
it,
doors
it
for
was a
that.
good school.
Right.
It's a very good school, by the way.
Right.
It's very good.
Right. So
And
we get to 1974. So 1974, that's when you and a group of individuals decide to band together and create SHIP. And I know that you told me that you, working in the city, working in the county, had already been involved with affinity groups for Latinos to a certain degree at a national level. But how did you decide to form and create SHIP?
okay, I'm going to tell you the story. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So here it is. At the county, they had a group called the LA City Employees Chicano Association,
Okay,
La Seca.
okay.
And let me think. No, I'm sorry. No, the city of LA. At the city of LA, they had La Seca, LA City Employees Chicano Association. So when I went over there, um, when I transferred over there, I eventually joined, but I didn't join right away because I didn't want to be pegged as a troublemaker because those things were radical in those days.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted to promote to an associate before I got involved. So I came in entry level. I waited till I became an associate. I passed another exam. I was pretty high on the list. It was for more structural engineering. I was a structural engineer, and which I liked a lot. And by the way, structural engineering is a part of civil engineering.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different sub-disciplines within civil engineering. So what happened is I joined the group, and Ernie Valdez was a president, and Ernie Valdez was a draftsman, and all the other people were engineers. They're the ones that started the group. And the reason they put him on because he was a tough guy. He was a street fighter, and he was a fighter too, a boxer.
Right.
And he had money too. He had some money. I don't know. And he was politically connected. He knew the first Latino in Congress, Congressman Roybal. His friend, he knew him pretty well. So this guy was the right guy to be president. The rest of the group, they just kind of backed him up,
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, one day this fellow from the county came to one of our meetings at the city, and he told us that to join. He came over because he liked what we're doing, and he told us about a program that was on the East Coast. It was being put on by the Sloan Foundation and the National Academy of Engineering, and this program to increase the number of minorities in engineering in the nation. And he told us about that. And he said, you guys should get involved with it. And so Ernie Valdez appointed me to be the liaison to find out what's going on. So I did what I had to do, and okay. I went over there and I went to a couple of meetings and I learned about the program. And for sure they were doing this increasing number of minorities in engineering. So I thought to myself, at that time, it was kind of like that planted the seed, you know. And I thought it would be a good idea to start an organization to address this for Latinos,
Mhm.
because and within the city there was another group called the LA Council of Black Professional Engineers, and they were kind of like focused on that, you know, helping each other. So kind of like all these things kind of like started to gel. And so I had this idea, and I came back, and I picked four other guys and told them, "Hey, this is happening. Let's start a group." And they said, "Yeah, good idea." They liked the idea. They all bought into it right away,
Mhm.
and they all were with La Seca. So we were already, you know, we were already, uh, what's the word?
Revolutionary or activist or
Well,
diversity and inclusive.
we worked together. We're
Okay.
colleagues, okay?
Okay.
And they also we all had the skills too, because we had skills within La Seca, you know, for political, for organizational, um, and that was a big thing, right?
Mhm.
For a group, and we're engineers besides everything else.
Right.
So right away we started to meet with another fellow. His name is Bill Nuanes, who wanted to join our group at the beginning, I liked Bill, but I didn't. And he was a very high level civil engineer in the city of LA.
Okay.
But he wanted to join because he believed in the cause, but I didn't want him to join yet. As
Okay.
much as he wanted to be right at the beginning.
Okay.
And then the reason I didn't let him join because he was a contrarian. And I had seen how, I think even La Seca, I saw how different groups had a hard time with names. Okay.
Right.
They would always argue about the names and this and that and that, this. And I didn't really want to waste time. I wanted to get this moving really quickly.
Mhm.
And so I didn't want Bill to be on there because he would be contrarian. I wanted some people that just kind of this all go forward, let's do this, and then they all agree. And the guys I had, they were all that kind of people, you know, hey, we're going to make this happen. And so we right after we incorporated, he came in, and he was my mentor thereafter. But anyway, the uh, the group, we decided right from the beginning, uh, contrary to what you said earlier, that it was going to be a national organization right at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. And we said, okay, we're going to, we were all members of the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE.
Yeah.
So right away we knew a national organization. And that was our model. Okay. We said, okay, well, they have chapters, they have professional chapters, they have student chapters. We're going to model it like that. It's going to be a
Okay.
national organization. And one of the reasons we make it national to begin with, for one thing, it was a national effort. It was not a parochial. It was not just one little area. And secondly, the organizations that we did know and that were Latino tend to be parochial. In other words, they tended to only be for Los Angeles or the Los Angeles area, and they didn't expand. It's pretty hard. If you don't do it right from the beginning, it's pretty hard later on because it's an afterthought. You need to do it right in the beginning. You have to plan it right away.
Okay.
And that's what we did. So I was a national president with 5 members, and we had a PO box across the street in the federal building. And we used to call that our national headquarters.
Okay.
So right away we're national. Then I had some friends. I mean, I tell people, a lot of things happen. They just kind of fall in place. And I just happen to be the person in the right place at the right time to make this happen. I happen to have uh, some other stories I could tell you, but I want to take your time on this. But I have friends who was the founder, one of the founders of the American Association of Spanish-speaking Certified Public Accountants, and it was a national organization. His name is Gilbert Vasquez. And I knew Gilbert pretty well. And I went up to him one day and said, hey, Gil, I'm starting this organization. like to get your help. And he said, don't worry about it. We'll help you out. I have an executive director, Danny Archuleta, introduce you to him, and he'll work with you and help you in anything you want. And right away, started helping me from the standpoint of, some of the logistics. And also he plugged me into the national scene because his group was a member of the Hispanic Forum in Washington, D.C. And that was headed up by Raul Izaguirre, Council of La Raza. And right away, they invited me to be a member of that group. And again, we were small. We didn't have a lot of people with. But right away, we're national already within our own community, And that's because the guild made that happen.
It's awesome. I have a couple questions there because you mentioned that pretty much your whole core group was part of La Seca, which was I would call it an ERG within the city of Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Yeah.
More or less. Okay. Because it's a small organization. It's within the LA city engineering building. And so that's where it was based. And then you go to this national convention in the East Coast, you come back, and then you decide, okay, we want to go ahead and form a national organization. Right away, you told us that you wanted to make it national. How did you finagle getting support and approval to establish chapters nationwide? Or how did that come about?
Well, everything kind of was organic, I guess.
Okay.
The word.
Okay.
I mean, again, we did plan it, and our model was ASCE, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that had chapters.
Okay.
It had student chapters too.
Right.
And when we first started SHPE, by the way, you asked me about the name. I don't know. You want to go into that?
Yes, let's focus on the name. Was Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers pronounced SHPE with the SHPE the first name, or did it actually have some other name and then you changed it? Because you mentioned that deciding on the name was something difficult.
So remember what I told you earlier. I said I wanted to get this moving very quickly.
Yes, sir.
I didn't want to waste time, right?
Yes.
And I had seen people or other organizations struggle with the name because everybody had an opinion.
Yeah.
And nothing got done.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually you got a name, but they kind of like fought over the name.
Yeah.
And they fought over other things. Yeah. So what I did at one of our meetings of our group, I came up with 5 names, okay?
Okay.
And I laid them on the table.
Okay.
And they fought over those, and they chose this one.
There we go. Okay. So you came up with the name, 5 names, and this is the one that came out off of that decision from that group. Okay, awesome. That's really cool. Now, another question that pops into my head. There's 7 regions of SHPE, right? Right now, that's what we have. But why is the South LA area, San Diego, Arizona, and Nevada, Region 2 versus being Region 1?
So I wasn't part of setting up the regions, okay? Because that came after some other president and board. But I can tell you why. The way they looked at it, they wanted to set it up because, okay, at that time when they did that, the regionalization is when we did have chapters different places, student chapters and professional chapters. Mm-hmm. And so what they wanted to do is set up regions where there was a professional chapter at least that could serve as the student chapters in that particular region. And not every area of the United States had, the chapters. So they had to break it up. Okay, this will work here because LA had the most. We're the beginning, right? That's where it began.
Right.
And so it was much smaller. The North had to take more because they were still, they still didn't have a lot of chapters, student chapters. So they would have to take Oregon and whatever. Right. So what I'm saying to you is that they based it on accommodating the student chapters by being able to be serviced by the professional chapters. So they kind of just divvied it up that way.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was the basis for the how they broke it up.
Okay. From your experience and perspective, looking back at those early years, what was the biggest obstacle that you encountered and how did you overcome it?
The biggest obstacle, hmm, we were really moving very quickly.
Hmm.
I don't. I'm trying to think what was really an obstacle. I mean, we needed funding.
Okay.
Um, okay, so if I had to say there was an obstacle or a problem, it would be that we could not service all the student chapters as well as they wanted. They wanted to be serviced,
Okay.
and we were a volunteer organization,
Right.
and we didn't have a lot of staff, so we couldn't really service them. We can provide that. So I think the biggest problem was that we didn't have staff and funding to be able to service the membership.
Okay.
Um, so that would be the biggest problem. It's still the biggest problem,
Yeah.
but it's now we're in a better position now than we ever have been. So I think that would be the biggest problem.
And that's a good point you brought up. Right now, SHIP, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, still mainly operates as a volunteer organization where the professional chapters as well as the student chapters are predominantly volunteer positions that develop your leadership skills because you hold a seat as a leader in that role for that chapter in that community at the local level. Where you report back up to the national, that's where it changes a little bit. There's different seats and positions, but that's still very important to note that this is all done by volunteer professional engineers at the professional chapter local region. What has been your biggest surprise and the most unexpected reward thus far that you never imagined?
With SHIP,
Yes, sir.
so let me think about that. Well, actually, because in a way, I get a question like that at every convention I go to. People ask me, "Did you imagine it to be like this? Are you really surprised?" That's a question, right?
Right.
And I tell them the same story. I said, "We're engineers. We planned it. We made it. We decided to make a national organization.
Hmm.
So we wanted it to be, national.
Right.
And so I'm not surprised by it, but I am impressed by it.
Okay.
Um, so the impression where I'm impressed the most is that the way we laid it out worked out really well. And I think I believed at that time, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but what I believed at the time when I was president, I was the driving force to get this going, right? So then I had seen a lot of Latino or other organizations where they depended on the one person for everything. And I decided that the best thing for me, because again, the model was ASCE, and I noticed that they would change presidents.
Hmm.
And I said, the best thing I could do is to step down and support, rather than to try to always be the leader. And because I felt that the only way we can get people to buy into it and to be motivated and take initiative was to allow them to be the leader, to be the president, to be the board members. And I think that's what's been the success of SHIP, because there's a lot of people. I mean, they argue amongst themselves,
Hmm.
because they really have bought into it. They're really loyal to SHIP, and each might have their own way of thinking how it should be, which way it should go.
Right.
But they got that motivation,
Right.
and I think that's the biggest plus that gets me excited, because when I go to these events, I see all these professionals that used to be students and now are hiring their students. And I'm kind of like, wow. I mean, it's kind of like, what's the word? I tell people, you know what, you have to go to our convention, because I don't care if you're an engineer or not. You're going to be impressed with the caliber of our students and professionals, and you'll be very proud. And that's what I am. I'm very proud,
Right.
very proud.
Yeah. And rightly so. Being proud of not only seeing what you created have fruits and bear fruits, but also being proud of being among the community. And this kind of circles all the way back to that question that that gentleman asked you, what are you doing here? And that proves to you that this is what I'm doing. This is my path. This is the road. This is the people that I'm here to help. This is the community that I'm here to promote and to support and to empower to reach higher, higher limits, other than what I had support with. Because you mentioned, and rightly so, at the college UCLA level, that you felt alone, that you felt that there was really nobody that, one, looked like you, two, had the same background and essentially experienced the same thing. Whereas SHIP, at the student level, student chapters, I was a member of UCSD SHIP chapter, and it gives you a sense of ship familia and family outside of your core family. And you mentioned it really well, and I want to highlight that, because when you go away from your home, your parents, your parents, your immediate family is well intended. They want to support you morally, financially, as much as they may, but there is a certain limit where they can no longer be your mentors, where educational or career path wise, they only have this because that's what they lived for and that's what they actually experienced. So they cannot pass anything further than that to you. So SHIP allows you to see that in a professional manner now, where professional engineers that look like you, act like you, have the same similar background, listen to very similar music that you kind of listen to and are can be relatable to, right? You understand from them and you think, oh, well, if they did it, también puedo yo. I can also do it.
That's exactly the sentiment.
Right, exactly. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. The sentiment of being in awe and amazement that, hey, I'm here and this was my mission, and I'm really happy that this is the way that's turned out. That's incredible. That's an incredible legacy, and that's why I said, you are one of those ferocious Latinos that gathered together and started this thing without really knowing whether it was going to work or not, but you just gave it your all. You put your heart into it and you said, we're going to make it work. Let's go. Make it happen. And that's what you did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what you did. And that's what Latinos tend to do when we put our mind to it. When we really want it, we make it work. Whatever it takes, however it goes, we put in, day out, and we just keep on striving. They tell you no, and you find a way to figure it out, and you go around the obstacle and you figure it out for sure. I definitely appreciate that. That's really amazing. That's incredible. It's a wonderful story, and I love the legacy, and I wanted to interview you just to hear that story and capture it and make sure that it was there for posterity. I'm pretty sure that you've had very many interviews, but I really, at a personal level, I'm really excited and really happy that you took the time to go ahead and answer those questions for me and for the audience, and to have that in here. So, uh, what is the next step for Rod Garcia? You are one of the founders and the creators for SHIP. That's a huge legacy in its own. You have surmounted many obstacles. You have been able to transform and function in a very difficult situation all of your life. You are successful. What is next for you, Senor?
Well, I in the interim, I've started 5 businesses, and I have one business right now out of the 5. And each one has been successful. So I have a business part of me, and one of the things I like to push with SHIP members, entrepreneurship. So I think I laid a few seeds out there, and I think there's some people out there that are going to do that. I've been, I think I'm at a point in my life where I'm beginning to kind of pull away from certain things. Not necessarily from SHIP, but give you an example. I also I sit on different boards. They're business, what do they call them? Small business advisory councils for Caltrans and for the LA Metro, and at one time also for the LA Unified School District. And basically, the whole thing was advocacy for small business and predominantly representing our community, Latinos, you know. And so I've been involved with that since I started my business. I started my business in 1981. Okay? I left the city and I started my business. So that has been very fulfilling. And there's a lot of people that now are involved. Like at LA Metro, there's a group there that called Transportation Business Advisory Council, TBAC. And they meet every month, and they talk about issues. They talk to the CEO there, and they push for certain things, opportunity basically for small businesses. And I was pretty much a part of establishing that too. And I got my teeth cut on that one from another gentleman named Edmundo Lopez, former Brown Beret, who used to be at Caltrans. And he had invited me to join that particular group in the advisory council. And I learned how to work, how to work that, and how to also work with other groups, other ethnic groups, and other, racial groups and gender groups. So that I learned how to work with other people. But now I'm kind of pulling away. I basically looking for other people to take over. And I've, appointed a couple of people, and I'm just backing off on those. And on SHIP, I'm on the board right now as a board member, appointed board member. And I don't know where that's going to go. I'd like to be an emeritus, but I don't know if they'll ever do it. Even if I don't have a vote, I'd like to be on it, but that'll be between them and themselves. But aside from that, the leadership now seems to be rolling right now, seems to be pretty good. Seems to be doing very well. We had some trouble years, but it seems to be doing well. So I'm thinking, okay, what's the next chapter for me, right? Mm-hmm. So I keep mulling that myself. My business is slowing up because I'm not pushing, I'm not marketing anymore. I'm not, for the last at least 5-10 years, I haven't been marketing a whole lot. I got a contract that's been fruitful. So I'm not really trying to grow my company. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of like at retirement age or at that age, but at the same time, I don't think myself retired. So I've been thinking about that. And so one of the things that keeps coming in my brain, and I said, I think I want to do something to do with the climate change. I want to maybe be an advocate in that area. Mm-hmm. So God willing, that'll be my next chapter.
Okay. So helping the climate fight global warming possibly, or support in reducing.
Well, yeah, I think we need
emissions.
Okay. I think it's a very big problem. Mm-hmm. And we could ignore it. And humans are good at ignoring things to the last minute.
Right.
And I think that's where we're at with the last minute right now.
Yeah.
And the trouble with that is that, we don't take care of ourselves. We're not going to be around in a long time.
Right.
So sure. I think it'd be good to make an effort in that area.
Okay. Okay.
And then I could all, let's say I do that. I could always tap into SHIP too, because we get a lot of talent there.
Yes.
Right. As far as a membership,
Right, that's for sure. That's awesome. That's an incredible plan. I hope if I can help you in any way, form, or shape, just let me know. Last couple questions. This are rapid fire, essentially. I would like to know, what do you believe your superpower to be? And if you can't
Uh,
think of one that you might have,
My
but
what? My what?
superpower. What do you think your superpower is? And if you don't,
Tenacity.
yes.
Tenacity.
Tenacity. Okay, tenacity. That's awesome. Awesome. Amazing. And then, do you have any particular book, movie, or podcast that you believe has made an impact in your life and you wish more people would actually take advantage of?
Well, very recently it was at I think it's called Kiss the Earth,
Okay.
and that's to do with climate change.
Oh, okay. Kiss the Earth.
So
It's a documentary or a movie?
it's a kind of a documentary. Yeah, it's documentary.
Okay, Kiss the Earth. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that that's impacting me right now. But as far as the past goes, uh, I think it's been some teachers along the way, some professors
Mm.
that have been impact me the most.
Okay, awesome, awesome. What is your definition of success? And when I, with the question, I mean now, I mean obviously, definition of success varies from person to person and stage of life to stage of life. But I'm referring to the definition of success that you hold at this moment in the present time.
So success is, like you said, many things to many people. And I learned along the way that there's several different areas that you really need to be balanced in. So you shouldn't be in one particular area. But at one time I thought success was just growing your business and doing well and making money. But success is more than that. Success is really, you gotta blend your community, your family, your religion, your health, and your business. They're all part of it. So you have to be successful in all of them. So you need to, when you do, you know how they say in business, you do a business plan that you plan your business. You do a life plan and you plan out your whole life and where you want to be.
Right.
And then you work backwards from there.
Excellent.
Because in every one area, if you're not balanced, you're not going to be happy.
Right. Yeah. And I would add for myself, you got to look at your internal core values and see what you actually believe and what is important to you in that respect to make sure that you balance that out, or at least make sure that it's included in that life plan. So
Right.
that's awesome. This last question, this is a very special question that I ask of every single guest in every episode that I do. I want you to go back, if we could time travel, go back to that 1974 young man. And this is right at that time when you're sitting down at your dining table the night before or a couple of days before you actually present the 5 names of ship, and you're drafting up the plan. And I want you to sit with that young Rod Garcia and share with them 3 pieces of advice that you've learned in your life. What would you actually tell that young Rod Garcia in that dining table that late evening when you're drafting up the names of the future organization?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you you need to be more confident. Uh, you have a lot. I had a lot of doubts. I mean, there's like I said, we had like our plan to do certain things and we did them. But when it came down like to different things, didn't quite have the confidence. So I would be telling, have more confidence. Okay. Um, Two, I would say you need to slow up a little bit because you're overdoing it. You're overdoing it, and your health is beginning to um, take the consequences because you're just pushing too hard. And I will tell you, you got to learn how to pace yourself because otherwise, you're no good to anybody if you have a heart attack and die. And who are you going to help then? And three, what would be the third thing? Um, I think the third thing would be uh, listen to your heart, and that probably goes back to the now to the family planning. But at that time, it was in a way it was a hard time because I had just gone through a divorce. So in a way, SHIP kind of helped me with that too because I was able to put a lot of energy into it. So I think part of it is kind of listen to your heart to allow yourself to be yourself and not to try to prove to the world what you might be or you should be. You just got to believe in yourself.
It's awesome. That's incredible advice. Thank you so much. Really enjoy the conversation. I want to acknowledge you for everything you've done. First of all, for being a wonderful human being, for giving of your time, then for creating such a wonderful national organization that personally has allowed me many joys and many fruits. And for the last thing, for sharing and allowing me to interview you. I want to acknowledge you for all of that
Well,
and
I
for
thank
opening
I
up.
thank you. I thank you quite a bit. I enjoyed this interview, by the way. It
Thank you
was
so much, sir.
a lot of fun.
Thank you. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining once again. Thank you for listening to another wonderful episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Share with other individuals. I'll see you next time. Lázaro Herrera, Success Innovation. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye. Thank you for finishing another fantastic episode with Success Innovation. Today we learned much more about Rod Garcia and the history that led up to the creation of SHIP, this great national organization that I so much love. We learned about some tough times during his early years and how things happen when you are in the right place at the right time. We learned about the collaboration and networking which really allowed him to create SHIP. Thank you, Rod Garcia, for your time and conversation with me. This has been Lázaro Herrera for Success Innovation. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.